I didn't realize that the university I went to, which is the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, has a botanical gardens. I went there for 4 years and never knew that they had beautiful outdoor botanical gardens, but they also have an indoor tropical greenhouse. So when I found that out, I thought to myself, okay, I have to go and do a tour. So I reached out to them, and their director of the botanical gardens, Jeff Gilman, gave me a behind the scenes tour for you guys. I absolutely love doing these types of episodes because I find that I learn so much when I'm filming them. I'm just a plant hobbyist, and I'm still learning so much every single day about the wonderful world of plants. So to do these types of episodes are just really, really fun for me to do. So I hope you enjoy it. Now, the Botanical Gardens at UNC Charlotte do an annual plant sale, which is about to start. April 7th it starts, and then it goes through the 9th. Jeff talks more in detail about the specifics of the plant sale, but they do have a lot of exotic plants. From what I heard, some cool rare plants to choose from. They also have a lot of native plants, and then it's also for a good cause because all of the proceeds go towards the university and support the university and the botanical gardens. So win-win. So if you do that, you know, if you end up attending, hit me up on Instagram, send me your pictures of what plants you pick out. I always love seeing what you guys are doing and what plants you end up coming home with. If you're new to my channel and you're wondering, oh, this is interesting, what type of content have I stumbled upon? Well, welcome. My name is Ashley, and I am a crazy plant person and proud. So if that brings a smile to your face and you want to see future episodes, make sure to subscribe. And we also have a wonderful plant community on Instagram that we would love for you to be a part of. So thanks for watching. Make sure to leave your comments. And again, huge thank you to the UNC Charlotte Botanical Gardens and Jeff for giving us a tour. Enjoy!
Hi, I'm Jeff Gilman. I am the director of the UNC Charlotte Botanical Gardens. Ashley asked me a little bit about my background, so I'm glad to share that with you. I'm originally from just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Went down to University of Georgia where I got my master's in entomology and PhD in horticulture. Then went up and was a professor at the University of Minnesota for 15 years. After that, I came down here to UNC Charlotte, where I have been the director of this botanical garden for going on 7 years now. The Botanical Gardens is an amazing place made up of 3 basic areas. The first area is the greenhouse, and that's what I'm going to walk you through today. Besides the greenhouse, there's also the Harwood Garden, which is kind of a planned garden. And the Vanland Glen is a native plant area. For people who don't know their plants, it's kind of a nature walk. But for people who do know their plants, it's an incredible collection of various native plants. One of the plants that we have an incredible collection of in the Glen is rhododendrons. In fact, at one time we had over 6,000 types of rhododendrons out there. Rhododendrons actually don't do well in the Charlotte area, so right now we're down to about 1,000. You know, you actually did pick a wonderful time to come through the gardens because it gives me the opportunity to tell you about a sale that we're about to have. April 7th, 8th, and 9th, we will be having our annual spring plant sale. Again, absolutely fantastic selection of things like native azaleas, if you're into native azaleas, and all kinds of other, mostly native plants. We're known for our native plants, but we certainly have exotics as well. One of the neat things about the plant sale is it's an opportunity for you to talk to people who have been working with plants for years and years. We can tell you what works well where. We love to talk to people that come in to visit. Do be aware that on the 7th, that is our Members Day. That is actually, it didn't used to be this way, but now we have most people coming on our Members Day. And why is that? Because I got to be honest with you, we sell out most of our really rare stuff on that first day. You can become a member at the sale, so you can come, you can look at all the plants and say to yourself, okay, I'm sure the stuff is going to be here tomorrow, and you don't have to become a member, you can come back. Or if you see stuff that you think might disappear, and a lot of stuff does disappear, you can say, okay, I'm going to become a member today so that I can buy this stuff today because I know it's going to be gone. So We invite you to come to the plant sale, check things out. Again, Members Day is the 7th. We'll also be selling the 8th and 9th on the 7th. Again, the Members Day, that'll be only from noon until 3. So it's going to be a relatively short period of time. On both Friday and Saturday, the 8th and 9th, it'll be from 9 until 3. This is the entryway to the greenhouse. Right now, it's mostly stocked with plant materials that we're going to be using for our plant sale. There is one interesting plant, though, that I'd like to show you real fast that if you are interested in trying at home, you certainly could. It's one that I find fascinating, and that is the foxface fruit. This is in a group of plants known as the Solanaceae, or the deadly nightshade family of plants. Besides foxface fruit, take a look at those spines on that leaf. They're very easy to graft onto one another. In fact, you can buy a plant called ketchup and fries. Why is it called ketchup and fries? Tomato on top, potato on the bottom. Easy, easy graft to make. In fact, it's one you can do at home if you're ever so inclined. Well, in the early 1960s, there was a horticulturist in New York who thought to himself, I'd like to get an early producing tomato. You know, tomatoes, they need a really warm ground before they grow. So he said to himself, what if I took something in the Solanaceae that grew in cold ground, say gypsum weed, and I grafted tomato on top? Wouldn't that work? Well, it did work. So he had really early producing tomatoes, and he made tomato sauce with it, and it sent 5 people to the hospital. And why is that? Because gypsum weed produces all kinds of nasty toxins in its roots, which then went up into the tomato, and the tomatoes were poisonous. Let's check out our orchid room. So this is the orchid room, and this area is full of orchids. Now, you may not realize it, but there are actually about 25,000 different species of orchid, which means there is a ton, obviously. We're in March right now, so you're looking at just a wide variety of orchids. Now, one of the things that I love about orchids is that they typically have amazing fragrances. You may not realize that because many of the orchids that you will see in the stores are what's known as the Phalaenopsis, or moth orchid. Now, the moth orchid is an absolutely lovely orchid, and it is a great first orchid for those of you who might be interested in collecting orchids. It's really easy to grow. But Phalaenopsis typically does not have fragrance. There are a few Phalaenopsis that have fragrance, but most of them do not have fragrance. So it's not one of my favorites. Now, an orchid that also will do well in your home, but is definitely intermediate in terms of its difficulty, would be a lady slipper orchid. And we have a number of different types of lady slipper orchids here. This is a Cattleya, and it's a cross between Bobbetts and Mary Jane. Those are just 2 species, but this is a Cattleya. Cattleya is kind of the old-fashioned orchid, often found on corsages. So an old-fashioned corsage orchid. I don't know why we ever switched over from the Cattleya to being the most popular orchid to the Phalaenopsis being the most popular orchid, because the fragrance on this is just insane.
I cannot believe the orchids they have here. I mean, look how beautiful they are. And I really love how everything's labeled. So if you're curious about what type of plant something is, it's all labeled. And I'm very curious to know which plants will be included in their plant sale that they're doing.
So here we do have some air plants and some other interesting species. This, by the way, if you're new to plants and you don't have air plants, then you're really missing something. These air plants, they're just really special, easy to grow plants that anybody can grow. Just mist them once a day, and they are going to do great for you. How often should you fertilize them? Once a month. They really don't need that much fertility. Fantastic plants. So come on through here.
How do you fertilize them? Do you get a spray?
So
like
the
an orchid?
easiest thing to do, you may be familiar with orchid fertilizer, the spray-on orchid fertilizer.
Yeah.
Easiest thing to do is to use that once a month, and these guys are going to do great. Some people like to fertilize them more. They like to really push growth. I don't see a reason to push growth. A little bit of fertilizer goes a long way. I am not a big fertilizer user. My background actually is, you know, experimenting with stuff like that, but right now I don't like to push it. As a side note, which may be interesting for you to note somewhere in this presentation, I am a horticulturist as opposed to a botanist. And you're probably asking yourself, what's the difference? Botanist, horticulturist, they seem the same to me. No, they're not even close to the same. A botanist is a scientist. They are just interested in the science of the plants. That's all great. I'm a horticulturist. I am a mercenary. That means I am interested in making money off of plants, or what I should say is that my training is making money off of plants. So the type of research that I'm most interested in is looking at things like fertility, irrigation, pruning. What can I do to make this plant grow faster and make money off of it? That's kind of what I trained in. As the head of a botanical garden, I've taken some of this with me, and I shouldn't say that I experiment with fertilizer and irrigation. I don't do a lot of that, but I do have to say that when I'm out here working with the different plants, and when I have to bring different plants in, what am I most interested? I'm most interested in economically important plants. I'm going to be more interested in vanilla than I am in something like well, in air plants, to be honest, because air plants, while I think they're really wonderful and really interesting, they're not exactly a moneymaker in the marketplace.
Look at this beautiful begonia. I believe it's an iron cross. Looks very much like it. I think I've just missed the window where a lot of these were blooming. Here are some gorgeous jewel orchids. Wow, look at the leaves of this orchid. This anthurium is massive. Ooh, looks like a gloriosum here. Some nice gloriosums. What is this one? I don't know if this is an orchid or a fern, because there are a lot of different types here. Look at the staghorn. Massive. Almost missed it. Look at this variegated fern. It is so beautiful. Just casually hanging out. There are so many amazing tropical plants. I cannot wait to show you guys everything.
Now we're entering an area where we actually have an artificial tree for growing different orchids. Now let me show you this real quick. This bark is actually imported from Portugal. This is cork bark, which is a type of oak. The reason we use cork bark is because many of our orchids are epiphytes. What's an epiphyte? An epiphyte is a plant that lives above the surface of the soil, okay? So it digs its roots into furrows in the bark. Cork bark has these wonderful furrows. You can see the roots of these orchids just digging themselves in all along the length of this branch, okay? So this is an artificial tree, really, really cool. We have a whole bunch of orchids growing on it right now. Unfortunately, it's not in heavy bloom right now. This one really looks like a lady slipper. So you get that.
That's beautiful.
Isn't that insane? We've got a bunch. This is probably the one that looks most like an actual slipper. Yeah. Over here, just to show you something neat, we've got a propagation area. We have something that you don't see every day. These are corpse flowers. What is the corpse flower? Well, it's kind of famous. This is the flower that takes about 12 to 15 years to bloom for the first time. After it blooms, it will hold that bloom for about 2 days, and then it will cease blooming. And if you're lucky, you get another bloom about 2 years later, and then usually you get 2 blooms and it dies. When it blooms, that bloom smells like a dead animal. They say it smells like a dead animal. That is not the truth. It does not smell like a dead animal. It smells like a cross between a dead animal and a pile of dirty baby diapers. And every single plant, and I say this having smelled a number of them now, every single plant has its own distinctive yuckiness, which is kind of cool as well, because you can almost identify which plant is blooming by the way that it stinks. And actually, let me be honest, it's an inflorescence, not a bloom. Inflorescence means that it's a bunch of flowers, not a single flower. And that bloom will be approximately, in captivity, approximately 5 to 7 feet tall. In the wild, it can reach 11 feet tall. Now actually, I know that your show is all about houseplants, but sometimes you've got to break out of that a little bit. So I'm going to show you some plants out in this area, which can certainly spend part of the year inside, but are really better off left outdoors most of the time when you can. What we have out here is a bog garden. And what a bog garden is a garden which has extremely low nutrients and is used to a lot of water, just like a wild bog. So this low nutrient situation means that it is full of plants which need to get nutrients from somewhere other than the soil. How do these plants get their nutrients? Well, some of them are used to just dealing with low nutrients, and some of them get their nutrients from insects, carnivorous plants. Almost all of the plants in this area are native to North Carolina. So, what plants do we have out here? Well, we have pitcher plants, and I'm going to show you a pitcher plant in just a second. We have the Venus flytrap. A lot of people don't realize it, but the Venus flytrap is native to Wilmington, North Carolina, and an area just around it, and that's the only place you find Venus flytraps. I can't tell you how many people come here and say, that's got to be from Brazil. No, it's not from Brazil. It's from right here in North Carolina. And then, besides pitcher plants and the Venus flytrap, the third type of carnivorous plant that we have is the sundew. Sundews have very, very fine hairs on them and catch teeny tiny little insects. So pitcher plants have many, many different looks. Pink pitcher plant, kind of squat and stout. Then we have pitcher plants similar to this, which are a little bit more common. Now, we pulled this one out this year, and I wonder if you're like me and are curious about what might be inside there. The anticipation is killing me. Well, this was very surprising. We do have a moth and another moth. This has just about the coolest backstory that you can imagine. This is a spore-producing plant. So what? Those spores have a really special characteristic. They are explosive. Why do you care that they're explosive? Have you ever seen those old photography things where they hold up the flash? Well, that flash in old photography is actually from club moth spores. Wow. So, a functional plant. As a horticulturist, it has a real purpose. Gotta love that plant. This room, we call it the dinosaur room because it's full primarily of what we call evolutionarily ancient plants, mostly spore formers. Okay? Not entirely, but mostly spore formers. One cool plant we have in here, which is not a spore former, is the flamingo pigtail plant.
Look at that.
And you gotta love that little, flamingo pigtail thing right there. Kind of cool, huh?
I've never seen that before.
Yeah. Well, it's a cool one. Let me see if I can.
This is a type of fern. perhaps a maidenhair. Again, it's so much bigger than what I normally see in mature. But I just love these leaves. So, so beautiful. Looks like there's some red philodendron, maybe like a Rojo Congo or red imperial. Then they have looking glass begonias. Oh, and I had to stop and stare at this one. I don't know if it's going to translate on camera, but it is the shiniest, most shimmery begonia I've like ever seen. Oh my gosh, amazing. And this one's actually quite shimmery as well. And look, they're all blooming, so beautiful. You know, one of the nice things about this is I can go through and see some of these plants that I don't ever get to see. And I can put it on my little wish list. Look, there's some Hoyas down there hanging out, Crimson Queen. This book was recommended, Bizarre Botanicals. For instance, this one I really want to add to my collection. Z's, some more begonias. Oh, look at this one. It's an interesting begonia. What is it? Begonia Hemsliana variegata. Ooh.
This is our succulent room, and it's full of plants that hold water in one way or another because they live in arid conditions. So they could hold their water in their stems, as with this cactus. They could hold water in their leaves. They could hold water in the crown of the plant. And what is the crown of the plant? That is where the roots intersect with the stem. So you can find all kinds of different ways that plants hold water because of arid conditions. Now, one plant I want to point out here is this peperonia right here. And the reason I want to point it out is because, as you've probably figured out, I am really into fragrances, and I would like for you to smell this and tell me what it smells like.
Popcorn, butter.
Fritos, Fritos. One thing about these plants that live in arid environments, typically it's not a foliage dense area. In other words, a whole lot of plants don't usually live in arid environments. So the plants have to be very showy or smelly in order to bring in insects, so the insects can find them. So these plants tend to have really bright, colorful shows when they are blooming, or really intense fragrances when they are blooming. Unfortunately, we're not in a really heavy blooming season right now, but if you come in here during a heavy blooming season, very bright, very showy.
Wow. Oh, you know I'm obsessed. So, okay. Oh my gosh, there's so much good stuff in here. Look at these little smushes. Wow. They're not labeled, but I have literally never seen anything like this. I don't know if it's a type of wisteria. It just looks like a melted blob, and I'm so into it. This is so cool. Euphorbia globosa. I didn't realize it can grow out like this. Look at that. Ah, here's the globby. It is a wisteria. Very rare type of wisteria. I have expensive taste in plants, clearly. Look at this Euphorbia. Oh, this is on my wish list. Look at this one. This is a Euphorbia. Oh, they have an astrophytum. So beautiful. I mean, you know they're a million years old too if they're this big. Here's another astrophytum. This is a myriostigma. The caudex on this plant is the biggest I've ever seen. It is really cool. I bet it's beautiful when it puts out leaves. This one I believe is called a blooming onion.
This next room, this is what I love. This is the fruit and spice room, and it is full of plants that mean something in terms of your diet. Start off right here. This is a starfruit, and the starfruit is just starting to set flower buds, and it will indeed produce starfruit, it being, you know, a starfruit plant. Over here, we have things like papaya, Meyer lemon. But let's go to one that's a little bit different. Here, give this a smell.
It's not cinnamon. Oh, I saw allspice.
Allspice.
Oh.
Isn't that crazy how intense that smell is? This is black pepper. This is black pepper right from the tree. Black pepper matures to a red pepper. But it is typically picked green. And when it's picked green, it's allowed to dry, and that is black pepper. Go ahead, give it a nibble. It will be hot.
It's spicy, but it's kind of refreshing at the same time. That's so crazy. I love it. Oh.
Clearing your sinuses?
Oh, yeah.
So another little story. One of the
There is.
I love giving people that to try, and I had a whole group of fourth graders come in. Yeah, sometimes I do really dumb things. I had people come in from the street wondering who I was killing.
Ah,
it was terrible.
I wish I could have been there to see that.
I'm glad you weren't.
They must have loved it.
They did. You know. Come on, chocolate. Gotta love chocolate. And coffee. And I want to show you something really, really interesting. Ashley, can you name this plant? You can, it's easy.
Spanish moss.
Very good, Spanish moss. And you're probably familiar with bromeliad.
Yep.
All right, Spanish moss and bromeliad, you're probably not surprised, are pretty closely related. No surprise there? No surprise there. Now, in your home, you can actually grow a fruit which is extremely closely related to that. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you know the fruit that you can grow whose closest relative is that bromeliad in the Spanish moss?
No.
No?
No.
Come on over here. What if I show it to you? Without, don't look at the sign, don't look at the sign. This is a baby.
Pineapple.
You got it.
Hey.
Pineapple is closely related to the bromeliad and the Spanish moss.
I can see it with the leaves.
Yes.
I see it now.
Yep.
Interesting.
All right. Well, this is our biggest corpse flower right now. This has already bloomed twice for us. Okay? We're hoping for a bloom next year. The corpse flower actually comes from something similar to a bulb. It's not actually a bulb, but something called a corm, C-O-R-M. That corm, the last time we weighed it, was about 60 pounds. My bet is about 70 or 80 right now.
We have some beautiful lipstick plant specimens. Just so gorgeous. And this one is blooming. Absolutely beautiful. Looks like there are some anthurium over there. Oh my gosh. Look at this. This is an anthurium. I don't even have this plant in my collection, but it's goals for one day if I manage to get one. This is an anthurium clarinervium, absolutely beautiful. Then we have another type of philodendron here, and the leaves are very bumpy and textured, so maybe a rugosum. Again, that's just a guess. This anthurium is flowering. Look at that. A little Ploumanii poking out here. And it's so fun to see the philodendron crawlers doing their thing, because this is what they want to do in nature. This is what they evolved to do, and when we keep them in planters, it's difficult for them to do this, obviously, to crawl and attach themselves. So it's really neat to actually be able to see that. Beautiful alocasia. I believe this is a type of Apiscia. Look at this huge variegated banana tree. It is amazing. And Jeffrey was saying that the bananas that it makes are actually variegated as well. Wow. Just, you know, anthuriums hanging out everywhere. Orchids and bromeliads. Huge anthuriums and gloriosums. Wow. I'm not sure if this is here are my best guesses. Florida green, pedatum, or squamiferum. The fuzzy stems make me think it's possibly squamiferum. The shape of the leaves, maybe pedatum. A fun mystery. If you know, make sure to leave it in the comments. Oh, there's beautiful monstera up there. Look at these cuties.
All right, so do we have insect problems in the greenhouse? Yes, yes we do. And you know, this is an example. Here's a little tiny mealybug right here. How do we control our problems? We are, stuck with might be the wrong term, but we actually use many of the same compounds that you do. We certainly have access and have licenses for restricted use pesticides, but we rarely use them. Why do we rarely use them? Well, because we've got people like you coming into the greenhouse, so we don't want to use something that could possibly poison you. And when we do use something like that, we'll put that area off limits for at least a few days. What we look at is REI, re-entry interval, and we make sure that we at least meet and usually far exceed the re-entry interval because we don't want you exposed to anything poisonous. So how do we control these pests? There are a couple of ways. The first thing we'll try is a hard stream of water. Does a hard stream of water work? Rarely. But it is the first thing that we'll try. And if we get it early, it can work. Next thing we may try is insecticidal soap or a light oil. Insecticidal soap typically does a great job. What it does is it actually hurts the outside waxy layer of the insect and causes it to dry out over time. And typically that works pretty well. Now it doesn't have a whole lot of residual. What I mean is you spray it, it kills the insect, but it doesn't linger on the plant and kill any additional insects. Another one that we rarely use is neem oil. Neem oil I don't particularly like because neem actually is a compound that can have negative effects on humans. Is it likely to? No, but it doesn't have that much benefit over regular horticultural oil. So I prefer to just use a horticultural oil, which will do the same thing as a neem oil. Some people claim that neem does a little bit more. I've used it for years. I haven't found it to do any extra, so I prefer to stick with, again, a light horticultural oil. If you're using a horticultural oil or a neem oil, do be very careful that it's not super hot and sunny, because if it's hot and sunny, that will actually cause issues to your plants. It can actually burn the edges of the plants, and I don't know if that's what caused this, but this is the type of damage that you'll see. One last thing, and I'm going to crush this guy because it's really just, it's bothering me. There, gone. There's nothing wrong with this type of control. In fact, that type of control can be the best. One last thing that we do, 2 plants that can handle it and some can't. Cotton swab, isopropyl alcohol, typically 70%. Get the isopropyl alcohol on the cotton, and wipe down the leaves, okay? And that works great. But some plants can't handle it. It will cause burn on some plants. So if you're not sure, make sure to test it on a few leaves before you try the whole thing. In terms of other compounds, I like to stay away from them. Some of them work well, but typically the ones that work well are a little bit more dangerous. Does this mean that sometimes we have to throw out plants? Yeah, it does. And unless it's a really rare plant, we just put them out of their misery. Sometimes that is the best thing to do. So I do want you to understand that you shouldn't try to save every plant that you've got. These plants can have so much disease and so much insect so many insect issues that it's worth it just to get rid of that plant and know that the pros do it too. So, you know, don't feel bad if sometimes you have to sacrifice a plant.
That's great advice. Thank you.
All right, so once again, we're gonna break out of the indoor plant, you know, mindset and take a look at just a few outdoor plants which you might consider for your yard. Here's winter honeysuckle, and this is one of my favorites. Winter honeysuckle is a little bit different than your regular honeysuckle, but it's extremely fragrant, especially earlier in the year, believe it or not. These have been blooming since late January, and if you have a wild place that you need to fill, these do great.
What kind of trees are these pink ones?
Okay, so
I've always wondered that.
Yeah,
they're so beautiful.
This is an amazing tree that we need more of. It is a native. It's called redbud. One of the reasons we need more of it, of course, is just because it's so beautiful, but the other reason that we need more of it is that it is a nitrogen fixer, a legume. What does that mean? That means it actually pulls nitrogen from the air and enriches the soil. Anytime that you can plant something which enriches the soil instead of just stealing nitrogen, it's a good thing.
So this is accessible for the students?
This is accessible. This is a free garden, accessible for everybody.
Yeah. What would you say is the best time of year to come visit?
Okay, so Larry Melichamp is the guy who built most of this garden. He's the director before me. And he did the best job that I've ever seen in any garden, and I'm talking the big ones too, of making sure that this garden is interesting every single month of the year. In fact, that trail up there, we're not going to go on that today, but that's our winter trail. And over the winter, that trail is absolutely amazing. I mean, most of your blooms want to pop in the spring. Just makes sense. So a springtime, if you can only come once a year, a May visit is probably what you're looking at. But assuming that you're anywhere around the Charlotte region, this is a garden that you should visit 4 times a year. You should visit around May, you should visit June, July-ish, you should visit October-ish, and you should visit in January. One of the things that I'm most interested in, or I should say was most interested in early in my career, was natural and organic insecticides. And let me tell you something, I don't believe in them. And I don't believe in them because a lot of your natural insecticides are as or more toxic than your synthetics. I mean, you think, oh, they're natural, rattlesnake bite, natural. A lot of these things aren't actually nearly as well studied as the synthetics. So I shouldn't say I stay away from organics, but I'm almost more careful with organics than I am with synthetics. I'm not showing you guys the boring plants. I'm showing you the ones that nobody knows about, but everybody should try. I want to take a look at this teeny weeny little flower here.
What is on? Are those flowers on there?
These are flowers.
They look like flies.
Now, well, get a close up on this. This is really an incredible little flower. Now, let me tell you a little secret about this plant that not many people know. And this plant is called butcher's broom. Now, as you're looking at that, I want to tell you something. This plant is lacking something. What is it lacking? Well, look at where that flower is growing. This isn't a leaf. This plant has no leaves. These are actually stems. That's why the flower is growing out of here. Flowers grow out of stems, not out of leaves. This plant has no leaves. And just to prove it to you, I'm yanking on this pretty hard. Notice it's not coming off. It's not coming off because it doesn't have what's known as a petiole, the base of the leaf. So this is just an extension of the stem. Now I'm going to show you something which is very, very sad. Y'all are prepared to cry? Come on in. That flower is sad. Why is that flower sad? Because it is a double. and doubles are by definition sand. What's a double? Well, this is a single, and this is a double. In the single, you'll notice it's full of male parts, stamens, okay? Full of stamens. In the double, there might be one in there. So, why is this so sad? I mean, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Why is it sad? It's sad because when you plant doubles, you're actually injuring the environment in which you plant these plants. Why? Because these doubles are actually mutants. And they are, just like the X-Men, they're mutants in that the male parts are mutated to become petals. Why does that matter to the environment? Because out here, there are a lot of predators. And those predators not only eat bad insects like aphids and spider mites. If you have a plant that doesn't produce that pollen, you have gotten rid of an alternate food source for things like lady beetles and lacewings and other beneficial insects. I'm not telling you to never plant a double. What I am telling you is that your yard should not be dominated by doubles because it is going to hurt beneficial insects' ability to feed themselves. This area right here, this is the Melichamp native terrace. I know that right now it just looks like a bunch of leaf mulch and a few little green things popping up. This is a summer garden, and in the summer, this is going to be full of native plants just absolutely going bonkers. Let me show you one of my favorite areas to sit. Right now we can see it, but soon we won't be able to see it. Right down there, that is called the Silver Bell Circle. And I will actually take classes and teach them in that circle right there. Now, very soon, as the perennials start to grow, it's going to block that off. And you sit back there and it's like you're all alone in the world. It's absolutely wonderful. One of the most interesting plants we have here. I know it looks like a green meatball. It is more than a green meatball. This, you could well have this around your house right now. If you're anywhere from Pennsylvania down to northern Florida, this could be around your house right now. This is Yaupon holly. Have you heard of Yaupon holly?
No, I haven't.
Okay, Yaupon holly is a relatively common shrub around houses. It is a native plant. Have you ever tried a drink called yerba mate?
Yes, I have actually.
Do you like yerba mate?
It's okay, kind of bitter.
Okay, good. But you have an opinion on it. You've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
Did it give you a good caffeine buzz?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yes.
Definitely did.
Good. Do you know that just about every culture has a source of caffeine? Yerba mate is the South American source of caffeine, and it is a holly. This Yaupon is very closely related to it. It is also a holly. Now, why is that so important? Well, it's so important because maybe you're looking for another source of caffeine. If you want a really good caffeine buzz, there is nothing better than the Yaupon holly. And that is because it includes two very important compounds, the first of which is obviously caffeine, but the second of which you might not guess, and that is theobromide. What's theobromide? Well, you know how coffee makes you up and jittery and jumping around? That's caffeine. You know how chocolate just makes you feel good? That's theobromide. This contains both. And that's one of the reasons it's special. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of history, which I consider fascinating. If you don't, you may want to pause for, skip ahead by a minute. But let me tell you this history because I think it's really interesting. The East India Company found out about this plant. Okay, the East India Company was the one who traded in tea. When the East India Company found out about this, they had great political pull. They banned this from being imported into the UK. And they banned it from being imported into the UK because they knew how well it would compete with tea, because it had that extra theobromide. They also helped, this is actually debatable, I've heard people argue both sides, but they also had it given its scientific name. What scientific name did they give it? Ilex, which is all hollies are Ilex. Ilex vomitoria. Now, it is true that Native Americans had a ceremony where they would starve themselves for about 3 days and then drink about 5 gallons of this stuff, and they vomited. Surprise, surprise, surprise. But this plant does not actually make you vomit. I drink the tea from this plant on a regular basis. I personally think that it's just about as good as any black tea on the market. And in terms of a caffeine buzz, there is, I guarantee you this, there is nothing better. What comes with that guarantee? Absolutely nothing. But this is going to be the best caffeine buzz you had. Now, I do want to give you a warning. Do not think that you can identify Yaupon holly yourself. There are some plants that look similar that are quite toxic. Please don't do that. You can buy Yaupon holly tea online, and that's where I would encourage you to get it. All right, so now we're in the Vanland Glen. This is the wooded area of the gardens. It's almost entirely native, and it was originally built, this is actually the first part of the gardens that was built back in 1966, and it was originally built actually as a place to test rhododendrons. In fact, throughout this garden, you will see rhododendrons almost everywhere. The funny thing about a lot of our rhododendrons is that while some of them are native, many of them are actually hybridized with various Asian species. So we have all kinds of different rhododendrons here. Rhododendrons are toxic all over, and they're actually quite toxic. You generally don't want to mess with them. Now, most toxic plants do have one part of their anatomy that isn't toxic, and this is going to make sense to you. Their nectar isn't toxic. Why isn't their nectar toxic? Well, because you don't want to poison your pollinators. That's just a bad practice. Well, not the rhododendrons. Rhododendrons do have a toxic nectar. So why is that interesting? Well, that's interesting because if a bee makes its honey out of primarily rhododendrons and azalea and mountain laurel, which are closely related and also have toxic nectar, then that honey will have certain properties. In fact, it'll be a mild hallucinogen, and it is called mad honey. Now, mad honey is not commonly produced in the United States, although you will periodically see it produced accidentally in the mountains. In fact, there are some interesting stories from the Civil War of Union soldiers getting stuck up in the mountains, a terrible frost coming through and killing everything but the rhododendrons, the Union soldiers finding wild honey in trees and then eating it and having odd hallucinations. So you will find that, but most of your mad honey, if you're looking to order it, comes out of Turkey right now. Actually, I have a friend he's a professor in the English department, and he actually found this very interesting article about the English importing mad honey from Turkey for stirring into their beer. One of the flowers that we are best known for out here at the Botanical Gardens is the bloodroot. Bloodroot, when it's really blooming out here, we have so much of it that the entire floor of the glen will be covered with these little white flowers, and it will look just as though it had snowed here in Charlotte. But what most people find most interesting about the bloodroot is the root. So let me show you what that root looks like. And it shouldn't be hard to find a little bit. There we go.
Oh, wow.
So here's a bloodroot.
Oh.
Pretty wild, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to trick my kids with that. Kind of mean, I guess. Anyway. All right, and the nice thing about it is you can take these little rhizomes, pop it back under the soil, and those will probably come up and do just fine. This is supposed to have anti-cancer properties. I have to be honest, I have no idea about that. All I can tell you is that it is a really good joke for Halloween. I told you earlier that I come from just outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now I'm going to show you my favorite plant in the entire place. And it's because of where I come from. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania is the birthplace of democracy, you know. But it's also the birthplace of all kinds of different American foods. One that comes to mind is scrapple. If you've heard of scrapple, it is made from all the parts of the pig that they won't use for sausage. I started eating it when I was about 5 or 6 and had no idea what was in it, so I still personally love it. But there's another food, in fact a drink, that comes from around Philadelphia, which to this day is just about my favorite drink on earth. It's not alcoholic, was at one time, but not now. I'm not telling you what it is because I want to get the plant that's used to make it, and then I'm going to have Ashley smell it and see if she can identify it.
Okay.
I'll tell you what the plant is in just a minute, but first I need to reveal the vascular system. Now go ahead and smell that.
Root beer.
It's not root beer, birch beer.
I've never heard of it.
Okay, okay. If you go to Philadelphia and you go to, the soda fountains, you're about as likely to find birch beer as you are to find root beer.
All right, I have a new mission. I gotta find some birch beer and try it.
It's not, you won't have too much trouble finding it. Just so you know, the dominant oil that you were smelling is actually oil of wintergreen, and this tree actually used to be used commercially to extract oil of wintergreen. So kinda neat there.
Right. How amazing was that? I am so sad that I went there for 4 years and had no idea that they had those amazing botanical gardens, but better late than never. And if you go to the plant sale, make sure to tag me on Instagram. I'm curious to see what you guys end up coming home with. So if you haven't subscribed, make sure to subscribe for future planty content and give us a follow on Instagram because we have a fabulous plant community on there that we'd love for you to be part of. Lots of great content coming out, and I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the day. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you soon. Bye.